When I started revisiting the Life is Strange series, I didn't expect to spend much time thinking about Before the Storm. Like a lot of people, I remember it as a quieter prequel, a story that filled in blanks, but didn't demand the same kind of attention as the main game's supernatural stakes. But then I started thinking about Rachel Amber. Not the poster, not the myth, but the person. Because Before the Storm doesn't just give Rachel a face, it gives her shape, breadth and contradiction. The game is set 3 years before Life is Strange, and this time you play as Chloe Price, still grieving her father, drifting through school and her own anger, unfettered, and then she meets Rachel Amber, the most popular girl in school, perfect, magnetic, distant, and then not so distant. What follows is a story of connection, of rebellion, of the kind of fast, all-consuming intimacy that only happens when you're young, hurt and desperate to feel seen. And for some players that connection, that version of Rachel, feels disorienting. Some see vulnerability, others see manipulation. The fandom is still divided. Was Rachel sincere with Chloe? Was she cruel? Or was she in love? Was she using her? Or was she just as lost as her? I've been thinking about that tension for a while now. Of course I can't resolve it, but I want to sit with it. Because what makes Rachel Amber so compelling is that she resists simple interpretation. This video isn't about defending her, it's about looking at her clearly, trying to understand how she moved through the world, what she wanted, what she feared, and why she became so many things to so many people. In the original Life is Strange, Rachel Amber isn't a character in the traditional sense. She's an absence felt not seen, talked about but never heard. And yet somehow she leaves the deepest impression on the world around her. Rachel is described in reverent tones by those who knew her, or believed they did. She was beautiful, magnetic, the kind of person who walked into a room and made gravity bend a little. Teachers call her gifted, peers describe her like a storm or a dream, or both. And because Rachel isn't present to speak for herself, we meet her through the lens of other people's needs. She becomes an empty frame where everyone paints their own portrait. A muse, a rebel, a liar, a saint. Her memory functions like a mirror, one that only reflects what others want to see. In that sense she is less a person than a projection, a ghost mythologized in memory. Everyone wants to remember her as something pure, something meaningful, and that desire to preserve her as an ideal prevents us from seeing her complexity. Until Before the Storm breaks the glass. When Rachel Amber steps out of memory and into the present in Before the Storm, she shatters the illusion. The muse becomes a person, and that person is messy, radiant and real. Rachel is magnetic but volatile. She can be achingly empathetic one moment and emotionally evasive the next. Her mood shifts like the wind, kind, passionate, impulsive and withholding. You never quite know where you stand with her, and yet you never want to leave. What makes Rachel so compelling is how sharply she walks the line between authenticity and performance. She feels deeply, but she acts too, both literally on stage and metaphorically in how she presents herself to the world. When Rachel speaks about truth, it feels profound. When she speaks about escape, it feels urgent. But beneath those desires is a strange contradiction. For all her longing for sincerity, she often uses misdirection to get what she wants. There's a tension between who Rachel is and who she performs, and it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. Her charisma isn't accidental, it's constructed and maintained, performed like a carefully rehearsed role, but it's not false, it's strategic. In this way, Rachel reflects a kind of theatrical self-fashioning that's deeply gendered and deeply human. It's a form of female heroism, built not on brute strength or stoic sacrifice, but on the ability to manipulate the narrative, to shape how one is seen in a world that rarely allows young women full control over their own image, and that's what makes her both admirable and unnerving. Rachel isn't just a pure victim of other people's projections, she's also the author of her own myth. She knows what people want from her, and sometimes she uses it. Rachel Amber may be a complex and mercurial figure, but to Chloe she's nothing short of divine. From the moment they connect in Before the Storm, Rachel becomes the emotional axis around which Chloe's entire world spins. She's not just a crush, not just a friend, she's a lifeline. a savior, the first person who really sees Chloe after years of feeling invisible. angry, and left behind. And while the bond between them is real and deeply moving, it is also fragile, because it rests not just on love but on idealization. Psychologically speaking, Chloe isn't falling for Rachel so much as she is falling for what Rachel represents. Carl Jung might say Rachel is Chloe's anima projection, a container for the parts of Chloe's psyche that feel lost, desired, or buried. Chloe doesn't just love Rachel, she needs her to be whole, to be free, to be seen. In object relations theory, this dynamic is known as projective idealization. When someone is wounded, they sometimes latch onto another person as a kind of psychic repair tool. Rachel becomes Chloe's emotional anchor and creative fantasy all at once. She's less a person than a possibility, a walking redemption arc, a mirror held up to Chloe's better, freer self. This doesn't make Chloe foolish or Rachel manipulative, it makes them young, vulnerable, and desperate for meaning. Rachel walks into her life like lightning, and Chloe doesn't just see her, she reads her, like a myth written just for her. But myths are hard to sustain, and when you love someone for what they represent, you risk not seeing who they really are. While Chloe, the player, and even the town of Arcadia Bay cast her in mythic terms, Rachel herself is anything but unaware. She knows how others see her. More than that, she curates it. Rachel is not only magnetic, she knows she's magnetic, and she uses that awareness like currency to navigate the unstable terrain of adolescence, family turmoil, and a town too small to contain her ambition. She isn't passively idolized, she orchestrates the performance. In this way, Rachel fits the archetype of the liminal girl, a figure suspended between adolescence and adulthood, between vulnerability and power, between sincerity and artifice. She is in transition, and crucially, she knows it. Her identity is not fixed, it's something she builds in real time, constantly adapting, based on who's watching and what they expect. Sociologist Irving Goffman, in the presentation of self in everyday life, proposed that all our social interactions work like theater. We play roles. We curate our behavior for specific audiences. We present the front stage self, confident, polished, in control, while hiding our vulnerable backstage truths. Rachel Amber is a case study in this idea. Her shifts between daughter, rebel, lover, muse, and student, they're not signs of inauthenticity, they're survival mechanisms. Rachel doesn't change because she's fake. She changes because she's under pressure, emotional, social, existential. Rachel has learned that to maintain control, she has to remain unreadable. By becoming what others want, she keeps her distance, preserves power, and protects the illusion of certainty. But every long-term performance comes with a cost. Her emotional volatility, the sudden shifts, the spirals into anger or softness. These aren't random, they're symptoms of dissonance, of a self stretched thin between image and reality. According to Erik Erikson's theory of psychological development, adolescence is defined by a crisis of identity, the tension between who you are and who the world demands you to be. Rachel is living that crisis in real time, her father's betrayal, her mother's abandonment, her community's expectations. All of it pulls her away from authenticity and towards fragmentation. She wants to be seen, but only on her terms. She craves truth, but can't risk vulnerability. A contradiction to be known and unknowable at once is not uncommon, especially for girls under pressure to be everything for everyone all at once. Rachel doesn't want to be a product of Arcadia Bay's illusions. She wants to remake herself, and she believes perhaps desperately that she can. In this way, Rachel Amber's self-perception is both constructed and cracked. She's not a manipulator, she's not a martyr. She's a girl in the act of becoming, trying to write her own myth, before the world writes it for her. The relationship between Rachel Amber and Chloe Price unfolds with startling intensity. Over just a few days in Before the Storm, the bond transforms into something intoxicating and unstable, a form of young love born from mutual recognition. A lightning strike of understanding between two girls who feel seen. Especially viewed through the lens of her moments of hot and cold behavior, the relationship raises harder questions. Psychologist Lisa Diamond, in her research on same-gender intimacy during adolescence, described something called emotional saturation, a phenomenon where young people, particularly girls, form relationships that escalate quickly and take on overwhelming emotional significance. Rachel and Chloe are textbook. Their connection isn't casual. It isn't slow, it is everything. But this bond doesn't exist in vacuum. It's forged in grief and chaos. Their love is built not just on passion but on instability, and that instability gives it fire. What we are seeing isn't just affection, it's attachment trauma. In psychology, this kind of bond is sometimes called trauma bonding, when emotional wounds from abandonment or instability draw people together with magnetic force. It can feel like destiny, it can feel like soulmates, and in many ways it is real, but it's also a coping mechanism. Both girls are trying desperately to find in each other what the world has denied them: security, validation, identity, and escape. This emotional dynamic, Rachel and Chloe, is often framed as romance, and it is in some ways. But if you look at it through the lens of attachment theory, something deeper comes into focus. This isn't just love, it's a pattern. Chloe, with her desperate need for closeness, her fear of abandonment, her tendency to cling to anyone who stays, embodies what psychologists call an anxious attachment style. She doesn't just want love, she needs it, and she needs it to feel whole. Rachel, by contrast, seems at ease in relationships, but emotionally she's elusive. She offers closeness, but only on her terms. This fits the shape of an avoidant attachment style, where intimacy is controlled, rationed, managed like a resource. Rachel decides when connection is offered, and when it is withheld. Together, they fall into what psychologists call the anxious avoidant loop, a cycle of pursuit and retreat, longing and reward, presence and distance. And that loop is not a manipulation in a cruel or calculated way, it's survival. It's how trauma-formed relationships often function, especially when both people are still trying to figure out who they are. Philosopher Paul Ricoeur once described identity as a narrative, not something you are, but something you are always writing. And in that framework, Chloe isn't just falling in love, she's writing herself through Rachel. Rachel becomes part of Chloe's myth. This kind of pedagogical self-writing, learning who you are to someone you idealize, is common in adolescence. But it comes at a cost, because in the process Rachel gets flattened, not in malice but in longing. She's no longer just a girl, she's a story. And maybe that's why the story stings, because we never hear it from Rachel's mouth. That's why we don't know clearly whether Rachel loved Chloe back in the same way. Their connection in Before the Storm is powerful, emotional, charged, but ambiguous. Was it truly romantic? Was it mutual? Or was it like so many adolescent bonds, uneven, life-changing for one, less defined for the other? That question lingers, and it only sharpens when we learn something else. Something Chloe would learn only late after Rachel passed. Rachel had another relationship, one that was hidden, with Frank Bowers. And that, more than anything, forces us to stop seeing Rachel only through Chloe's eyes. Because now we have to ask, who was Rachel when no one was watching? Rachel Amber's relationship with Frank Bowers, while never shown directly, is heavily implied to be romantic and, possibly, sexual. For many players, it's one of the most jarring relations of the game. The golden girl of Acadia Bay caught in a secret relationship with a much older man, hidden even from Chloe. And there's no way to soften the facts here. Frank is an adult in his late 20s. Rachel is a teenager. Regardless of the emotional context or supposed mutuality, the dynamic is fundamentally one of exploitation, and to me it's frankly disgusting. Academic literature on grooming consistently identifies a pattern. Adult figures preying on emotionally vulnerable teens, especially those facing unstable family environments or identity dislocation. Grooming isn't always overt, it thrives in ambiguity, in relationships that appear consensual, but are built on imbalance. Rachel fits many of the vulnerability markers. She's emotionally volatile, disconnected from both parents and seeking someone who makes her feel seen, understood and valued. Frank in turn fits the profile of what researchers call a predatory mentor. He provides drugs, he provides emotional attention, he offers a sense of freedom, all things Rachel is desperate for. But those gifts aren't free. They come with strings, secrecy, dependency, and an erasure of boundaries that Rachel at her age likely couldn't fully grasp. While the fandom often debates whether Rachel truly loved Frank, or whether she used him for escape, the deeper, more disturbing truth is that she should never have been put in that position in the first place. What looks like rebellion or complexity is in context a portrait of a girl surviving, by whatever means she can, means she's shaped by the failures of the adults around her. This relationship doesn't make Rachel any less worthy of empathy, it makes her more so, because ultimately this isn't a scandal, it's a tragedy. Rachel Amber is not a puzzle to be solved or a fantasy to be fulfilled. She's a portrait of an adolescent contradiction, luminous yet opaque, loving yet elusive. She carries the weight of a mythology she never asked for, whether filtered through Chloe's longing, the fandom's projection, or our own carefully crafted performances. Rachel remains just out of reach, and that in itself is the point. She isn't here to deliver a moral verdict, she's here to reflect the instability of identity. In the end, Life is Strange never lets us hear Rachel's voice directly and unfiltered. Her perspective is absent because the story was never fully hers to tell. She lived in the reflection of others, in fragments of longing and regret, in the echoes left behind. We don't just grieve Rachel because she died, we grieve her because she never got to finish becoming. We mourn the paths she never walked, the truth she never got to claim, the woman she might have grown into. And now that she's gone, we're left wondering, what, if anything of what remains in memory, was ever truly hers? That's the haunting legacy of Rachel Amber. Not the girl we lost, but the girl we never truly got to know.